Hello, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to announce that today our guest for our interview sessions is Emilie Schouten. Emilie is the Vice President of Human Resources at Coeur Mining. Coeur Mining is a well-diversified growing precious metals producer with 5 operations in North America. Today, Emilie will share with us a bit of her experience with diversity and inclusion programs at Coeur Mining. Thank you, Emilie, again for your time.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you, Nathalia.
Thank you. So, Emilie, one topic that is, of course, very important to us, and would love to understand your experience. It's diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, as some of our clients also call. We all agree that it's a time for change in mining, and mining is an industry that was mainly dominated by men. So one of the things that to us it would be very interesting to hear from you is, when did Coeur start to discuss the implementation of inclusion policies?
Sure. So I would be remiss if I didn't really give the credit to our CEO, Mitch Krebs. So when Mitch was first CEO, his first action was actually moving the headquarters to Chicago. We went from having about 8% diversity, non-white males in the headquarters office to over 60% today in Chicago. So just being in that metropolitan area where he knew that the face of mining and a headquarters for mining, precious metal mining, was going to make that much of an impact of the type of talent that we brought in was his baby, right? So that was the first thing he did when he was CEO. And it hasn't really stopped since then. So the next thing that he really made as a marker for diversity inclusion was our board. And what once was a 100% white male board now has 2 fabulous females and multiple people from minority groups. So I think that was his second piece, check. And then I'll give him credit for me. He took a flyer on promoting me, and I was the first female executive in the 90-year history of our company.
Wow.
So I truly believe that you can't really talk and have programs without having a leader like Mitch who sets the tone from the top. Because when he makes it a priority, then everybody wants to follow that. So I give him the first and foremost credit of really making that dream a reality, and I'm a product of it.
Wow. Amazing. It is great to hear that. So Emilie, if you could share with me a bit more about the current programs that Coeur has in place.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very cognizant in, we have to call them programs because there's not really a better way to describe them. But really why I hesitate in calling them programs is I don't want them to be something that has a start and a stop. I want the initiatives and the way that we have been incorporating bringing diverse talent and women into mining to be really not a program anymore. I want them to become something that's just inherent in the way we work. But obviously, in reality, we have to call them something, so we call them programs. So the first thing I would say, again, back to Mitch and the credit to Mitch, we very simply signed what's called the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And again, it just signals to the industry. He was the first and still is the only precious metal CEO, mining CEO, to sign that action. And really, it's a collective representation of CEOs that are putting diversity and inclusion at the forefront of conversations and sharing best practices across some of the biggest companies in the world to share what are the struggles, what are the programs that have worked. So it's just a fantastic collective powerhouse of different ideas, and having the discussion and knowing that again, most of the CEOs, unfortunately, in the United States are white males. They're making this signatory to say this is a priority, and I'm not going to just make it an HR thing. I'm going to make it something that we as leaders need to make as a part of it. So that the CEO action is just our first and foremost. Then we've done things like Coeur Heroes. So our Coeur Heroes program is hiring veterans and active military, providing them with mentorship. And this has really opened a lot of diverse candidates through the CEO or through the Coeur Heroes program, because our military talent, we tend to find, are fantastic at adapting to our mining needs. So things like leadership, things like being at a camp site, just the schedules that are different. We have found that to be a great feeder for diversity. And then, of course, partnering with Women in Mining, fantastic organization. We've actually leveraged the COVID pandemic to provide some opportunity of getting core mining out there with women in mining and partnering with them in ways for career fairs and for info sessions virtually that we probably wouldn't have done in the past. But because of COVID and everyone being on Zoom like we are right now, it's drawing a new level of interest just by being creative in how we put our name out there. So that's just a handful of the basic things that, again, I hate to call them programs because we really want to make this a sustainable way that we work.
Sure. I have heard many initiatives, but this one definitely it's outstanding. I'm very impressed, Emily. So and also human in mining, definitely it makes a difference. It has a huge impact in all initiatives that I have heard. So congratulations. It really sounds amazing. So you were saying about some of the initiatives, and definitely there are a few elements that are key to determine the success of these programs. One of those elements definitely is the CEO action that you already mentioned. Is there any other key thing that you find, okay, this is mandatory in order to have a program that we definitely see success?
I think there's two things. So one is the simple measurement. So as HR, we can measure turnover of females as a whole, and then also from, is it coming from different management groups or different functions where we're seeing higher turnover, and starting to ask the questions of what's issues of that turnover. Also our hiring activity, measuring ways that we can, if there's certain areas where we're not seeing female candidates come in, how are we measuring those things? So that's the first thing, is really having a review, and a very conscious review of those metrics to make sure that we are actually walking the talk. And then I think the second thing, which is that it's easier to say, but I think it's tougher to achieve, is really having a culture where we're supporting each other every day and having inclusivity. So you'll hear me say this over and over again. I struggle with having just diversity metrics without having the foundation of inclusivity first and foremost. So how do we do that? I think it's having the courage, and again, it starts with leadership, having the courage to call each other out when things don't feel inclusive, when we are hearing comments that we don't feel are inclusive, whether it's, men calling out men or women calling out men. I think you have to really chip away at that in the day-to-day in order to create the culture. And again, it starts with leadership.
Great, thank you. So we definitely need to establish some frameworks in order to create a place in a culture of inclusivity. And one word that I find important, and you already mentioned at the beginning of the call, is to create this, these programs, as we're calling programs today, but that are sustainable in time. So the key, and what are, the key frameworks that you understand are important to make these programs also sustainable in time?
Yeah. Well, I genuinely believe it's a pretty simple answer, that it can't be an HR initiative. We have to work, meaning when I say we, I mean the HR department has to work with the frontline leaders, has to work with our operators to really educate and ingrain this as a way of thinking. So if you just have HR looking at the measures, explaining why, this is an aging workforce in mining, and we have to get creative of how we bring in new talent. And there's a whole group of females as one, pool of talent that we could be leveraging to bring in and educate in mining. So I think it's got to be that it's not an HR thing, that it is really a business need, and working with our operations team to support that.
Okay. And if you could share with me a bit of, at least most of the times that we speak with leaders in HR, one element that they bring to us very often, it's how, the strategies they need to create to deal with unconscious bias. So I believe this is one point that it's mandatory and to speak about, and when you talk about diversity and inclusion. So what are the strategies that Coeur have developed to deal with unconscious bias?
Well, I think the first thing with this, I think it's a very fancy word, right? Unconscious bias. I think it's the simplicity that we all have biases, and that's okay. And what we have done that's been a fantastic success is a training program on really getting comfortable with, again, creating this culture of calling out when you see that unconscious bias tilting into being, somewhat offensive, or, that's not okay. So the training introduces this conversation of red, yellow, and green. And it's as simple as, if you said something to me, Nathalia, that I'm like, oh, that's really red, Nathalia, or keep it in the green, Nathalia. The concept is, if it's teetering on offensive, it's in the red. If it's okay, it's in the green. And I know it sounds very elementary, but it is a huge impact, because in everyday conversations, and it can happen around the executive table, or it can happen in a line-out meeting, people are going to say stuff that their unconscious bias turns into words.
Sure.
And because it's all about what the words feel like to the person, as opposed to the intent of the person, having just a simple way to call each other out of red, ooh, that was a little yellow, or keep it in the green, is a very easy way to call each other out without it turning into, and this is the SVP of HR saying this, without it turning into an investigation with HR, and like, I don't want to deal with it. We will deal with it if it's really not okay. But let's empower the people on the front line, and even all of us, to be able to just simply say, you know what, that's not okay. And just saying that is sometimes hard. So having some vernacular that's just keep it in the green, that was really red, is a great basic way, I think, for all of us to say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't even know that was offensive.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, it's going back to the simple things, but it sounds that it has already generated a great impact and has been effective, and this is all that matters.
Yeah.
Great. So, Emilie, now turning to side level, to me, it's also interesting to understand your perception of what are the main initiatives that Coeur have, implemented in order to attract, retain more women at the side level.
Sure. So while I'm not jumping up and down at our overall female percentage, it's hovered around 11%. So
Okay.
we've gone up, we've gone down, that is not where I want it. And I do want to see that increase. What I am proud of is 66% of our females are in management or above roles. So we have made a very concerted effort, and that is kudos to, let's face it, our male leaders in identifying our top females and retaining them and promoting them. So that's the first thing I would say. One particular STAR initiative program, whatever you want to call it, has been our impact training. Our impact training is a 2-year program for frontline supervisors where they come together every 6 months and they work on self, they work on team, and then they work on business acumen. And the same cohort comes together every 6 months, and then they have a graduation here in Chicago. What this has done for our female leadership that have gone through that has been fantastic. I've seen promotions, I've seen women that were struggling with, should I lean in? Should I take a step back because I'm going to be a mom soon? And it has been the support of their male colleagues in that program that has really encouraged them to stick it out, to be promoted, to lean in to their careers, that I've seen the success that we've had. We also have a mentorship program in the impact training where folks have a mentor for those 2 years. And of course, it ends up being beyond that, where they're getting additional feedback beyond their leaders. And they get to pick their mentor, which I think is important. And that has also provided great retention for those female leaders through the program.
Mm-hmm. Great. Emilie, regarding, again, we are talking about diversity, inclusion, but now focusing a bit more about women. As a female leader in this very predominant male industry, what would you say for women that are just starting the mining world? What were your main challenges in achieving your current position, and what are the tips that you would give for women that are exploring the possibility of joining this mining world?
Sure. So big question, but the answer, again, I think is pretty simple. I did not want this role because I was told by my predecessor that I would never get it. And surprised he was a man. So I had a lot of self-doubt. I had to be very vulnerable and open with my team that was peers that are now my direct reports, in saying, like, is this going to be okay? And the truth of it is, Nathalia, I'm not sure if that's unique to being a woman. But this is my experience, and I'm a woman, so I'll go with it. But I think really the tip is being yourself and being your authentic self. I find that men and women think that if you're in an executive position, when you're not in the executive position, you're looking up at the executives like, wow, like they know what they're doing, they have it all together. I mean, the reality is, I just am who I am. And I remember going into my first board meeting, and I had rehearsed and I had, all my points down. And the morning of, I'm like, I don't like how this is being delivered as I'm rehearsing it. And I really just had this wave of, Emilie, you just need to be yourself. And then if they don't like it, then I'm not pretending to be this person that they don't like. They just don't like me. And here I am 4 years later. Luckily, it's worked for me. But I think time and time again, women sometimes think that they have to adjust their personality, like swear like the men do, or, just be you. And to me, the piece of it is I want my daughters, I have 2 little girls. I want them to know that message and believe in that message. And I think having the support going to the men that surround me on my team to say, hey, I don't have a clue what I'm doing with this. Can you help me? They want to champion that, whether you're a man or a woman, more than anything. So I really believe it's about being yourself.
Great answer. And yeah, I completely agree with you. As being a woman in this industry, it's all about being yourself and not trying to pretend to be something that we're not. Yeah. And finally, Emilie, where would you like to see the mining industry, if we could say, on this front in 10 years from now?
There is so much, I'm sure you in talking with folks at cocktail parties or at a family gathering, there is so much opportunity to educate people on the amazing things that precious metal mining brings to our world, whether it's our hospitals, electronic vehicles, solar energy. People just don't know how fantastic precious metal mining is to our world. And so I think the first thing is educating. And there's so much opportunity in that marketing to pull in women, especially to the industry, to say we can be flexible. The more women that are in leadership positions, the more we can encourage flexibility in our schedules. And I think with digitization and automation, with everything that's going on in our industry, it's going to change the face of the talent we bring in. And why not have that be women and people of color, and opening up the opportunities that we have in this industry? Because I think it's just it's so surprising to me how many people you talk to, wherever I'm in the doctor's office. So like, that's amazing. I never knew that about silver. And the adventures that you can experience in this industry, I think it is very addicting, and the people that become a part of the industry love it. And I just really want to make sure that we make women and people of color a part of that journey.
Yes, I just loved your answer, and I agree. Sometimes I just believe, and I find myself speaking about mining with people everywhere in the supermarket, and yeah, I'm very passionate about it, and I definitely can see you're very passionate about it. That's why you're so successful, and to us is such a great pleasure to have the chance and the opportunity to hear about your experience and all the programs, initiatives that you are involved with, and Coeur mining as well. I guess this is what we have planned for today, Emilie. Thank you very much for your time, your attention. Congratulations for all the initiatives, and I hope to speak with you soon.
Nathalia, thank you. And thank you, Globe 24, for inviting me. This is fantastic. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilie. Bye.
Bye-bye.